Warning, the following video contains strong language which may be offensive to some viewers and/or inappropriate for children. The content within this video is intended for mature audiences only. Welcome to Meet the Author, where you can join in on insightful conversations with best-selling and award-winning indie published authors. Your hosts today are Rob and Joan, who themselves are indie published authors, book publicists, and paranormal investigators with Tampa Bay Spirits, based in Tampa Bay, Florida. Thanks for dropping by. And now, on with the show.
Hello. Welcome to the show. I'm Joan.
And I'm Rob.
Tonight we have two great authors for you to meet. And we'll be bringing them on in a minute. Well, we'll bring Gerald Darnell out first, and then we're going to bring out Mike Daigle.
And Gerald is the author of the Carson Reno series, Carson Reno Mystery Series. There's 21 books in all in the series. And
we're going to have a book giveaway.
That's right.
From both authors. So be sure and stay tuned for that and see how you can enter into those contests.
All right. So without further ado, why don't we bring in Gerald and see what he has to say.
That
Hi,
put you
Gerald.
on the spot, didn't it, Gerald? See what you have to say.
Well, thank you. I'm glad to be here, and I'm glad for all the disclaimers that you had there. This is
Well, there's actually a reason for that. It's because it goes on YouTube, and YouTube is very particular about that.
we don't want anything to drive people away. That's right. Thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to being here.
Great. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, I live in Florida. I was born in Florida, so I can call myself a native. I grew up in Tennessee, which probably is the background for a lot of the books that I write. I spent almost 40 years, 38 years in the computer business and retired. And then I began to write. Now, I didn't really write much before that. A little in college. I wrote for some college, some newspapers, and I did some things for some outdoor sporting magazines. But mostly, really, what I have done started after I retired.
So you didn't write like in high school or college?
Well, only when I really had to.
Yeah, I meant stories.
Nothing for published. No, I did not. As I said, I did write for some sporting magazines after college and some outdoor articles and that kind of stuff, but nothing major. No.
So I understand you have some books you want to give away?
We will give away 4 books out of my personal library to those. I guess the way is to respond to my email and give me some information about yourself and tell me that and what you would like to read, and I'll take something from my library and send it off to you.
Awesome. I'm sure that'll be exciting.
Is that okay?
Yeah, that sounds great.
Perfect.
What are your 2 latest books that you've recently written? Want to tell us a little bit about them?
The most recent book is a book called Sin and Stilettos. And it's as there you go. As most of my books, they're centered in and around the Memphis area. This book is about a lady who's murdered, and she's a exotic dancer. And my character, Carson Reno, is hired by a person. Her boyfriend is accused of the murder, and his daughter, 12-year-old daughter, hires Carson to see if you can't fix the problem. And it goes from there to the underworld of the 1960s. And by the way, all of Carson's are centered in the 1960s. So it's these are Noir type stories. And I won't give away anything, but it kind of goes from there.
How does the Peabody Hotel play into all this?
Well, in my earlier life, I worked at the Peabody Hotel. I had an office there. I worked for the owners of the Peabody, and so I'm familiar with with the hotel. And I tie it in there because my character has an office in the Peabody, and a lot of the stories that you will read, or a lot of the things you will read in the stories about the Peabody are actually true. They happened while I was working there.
Wow.
Well, that's always interesting to put that kind of truth into it. I really enjoy books like that myself.
Well, John, what I try to do, I call my writing fiction for fun, and in that I tell a story that didn't happen but could have. I use real places, real geography. I use fictional characters, and I sprinkle a few maybe real ones in there as we go along. And I play a lot on characters. A lot of the stories are character based, and I play a lot with names in my characters. I enjoy doing that.
Who would you say was your most difficult antagonist that you wrote about?
Oh, Lord, I don't know.
It was going to be a quiz, did you?
It's not multiple choice. I can. I say probably early in my first 3 or 4 books, I wrote about a serial killer that was in a town, which I use my hometown as a basis for that, and he was.
That's Humboldt, Tennessee, right?
That's it. That's Humboldt. Right. And I use that in most all my books, and I use locations that I'm familiar with there, and old bars and bistros and places we used to go. So I'm not writing about something I'm not familiar with, and again, and also including with the Peabody Hotel.
Yeah. We write about what we're familiar with too. It's the easiest way to make it real,
Well, you make it as as I say, it's fiction for fun. I tell a story that didn't happen, but it could have.
Right.
And I'm using characters that aren't real, but I'm using places that are real.
Yeah.
And mix them together, and I do sprinkle in there a few characters that. Names not told, names disguised, but they are real characters, and the characters from me or my background or that I know. And then I always throw in some other characters. I do this in characters that continue and some that don't continue. I play with names like we'll do a lawyer by the name of Bend Over. Another character with the name of his name is Lefty Then Right. And then someone just named 3 because he happened to be the 3rd child. They didn't have a name for him. Clarence Pearly Gates. And some characters that do continue. Some continue through the stories, most don't, but Bella Spruce, a Chinese character by the name of Chu Yu.
Oh dear.
Whoops.
Squeaky Turn operates the elevator. Salty Nuts. Loretta Ginn. And Clarence Pearly Gates. So I play with names, and I enjoy doing that. And it's but they're sprinkled throughout the stories in various places.
Right. So they can anybody that wants a book or wins a book there, can pick any one of the 21 books in the series, right?
Yeah, they are all separate stories.
Standalone.
They're all standalone. It's not necessary to read them in any particular order. Each story is composite. There are characters, some that continue from one to the other, but it's not necessary to read one. It doesn't matter. You can read the last one, the last to first, or in the middle. It makes no difference.
Awesome.
Ours are also standalone, but they also meld one into the other. It actually kind of builds, I should say, but it's not one story arc. The story arc is finished in each book.
No, it's not. I mean, I have core characters that do continue from one story to the next.
Right.
And they all are based in the 1960s, and really I base them all 1962, 1963, somewhere in that time frame, which is authors that write in a different era. There are challenges because you don't have forensics, you don't have cell phones, you want to talk to somebody, you got to stop and go to a payphone. When's the last time you saw a payphone and do that kind of stuff? So it's those things are challenging. And I do something that I don't know that I've seen other authors do, but I'm sure they have. I just haven't seen their books, but I do illustrations in all of my books. They're illustrated by either real photographs, real pictures, and of the places that we are actually talking about. Again, most of them don't exist anymore, but those that I can come up with are there. So the books are illustrated heavily.
Who does the illustrations?
I'm sorry?
Who does the illustrations?
Well, I do most of it. I do have a couple of people that have done some drawings and illustrations for me that I use for places that are no longer there that we couldn't identify. So we just have to use a pencil drawing. So I've done that, and they're identified in the book, and they're given credit for that. But photographs and pictures and stuff are throughout all books, all of them.
I just want to mention Gerald will be on for another 15 minutes or so before we bring our next guest in. So if anybody has any questions specifically for Gerald, now would be a good time to ask. Mm-hmm. What one of your more recent books is The Innocent Stranger, and give us an idea what that's about.
Well, it's a story of a actually it's the base of the case is an insurance investigation. It's an individual that has disappeared, and he disappeared on a hunting trip. His wife has filed for $1 million life insurance claim, and they come to Carson to ask him to go try to resolve the situation, and so the insurance company can settle the claim. As it turns out, he's not. They don't have a body. He's just missing. There's other people that they have found bodies, but they're not his. And there's another innocent person which is the innocent stranger part of it, that murdered in his apartment. And so they begin to go looking see if they can find this guy. So it's really an insurance case with a lot of dead folks along the way, and
sounds like real life. I don't know.
Yeah, folks dying in apartments and been there for several months, and some being put in commercial dryers and dying. So it has a lot of action in it. It again is in Memphis, and it's there. It goes from there up to West Tennessee, and I do bring a little bit of my hometown Humboldt into that story as well. But it's been very popular. Not as popular as the last book, but it's been quite popular.
Do you do a lot of research for your books? Do you find?
John, I do if I need to. There's a lot that I know and a lot I don't have to research. I mean, I wrote a book, a couple of 2-3 books ago, and I include a place called the Silver Slipper, which was an old nightclub that was outside of Memphis, and we included that in the story. But I knew where it was. I don't recall I've ever been there, but I could have. And yes, I do that. I want to make it as factual as I possibly can in terms of logistics and the places that I'm using in the story. I do try to do that. Yes.
Yeah. Do you like doing the research?
Well, yeah, I do. I do.
I like doing the research. That's why I asked, because it's one of my favorite things to do. I mean, I really do.
God loves Google, don't he? I mean, it's
yeah. Yeah, that's why you invented Google.
I mean, without that, these things would be, at least some of the things I do would be almost impossible. So, yeah, it's nice to have that. But yes, you don't have to get in the plane.
It would be a lot of time spent in the library and, in historical societies and stuff like that instead of
in the most recent book, Sin and Stilettos. I mean, I actually show you the place, which was a strip club, and it was in Memphis, and I show you where it was, and I had been there. I knew where it was, and it's no longer there, but there's something else there. But giving you geography and pictures of the place when it actually existed back in the 60s.
Yeah, that's
good. You get a real feel of it. I mean, that's what I want you to do. Plus the story. I mean, the story's there, but I feel like you're within the story, not just reading the story. You're in it.
Exactly.
You want to draw them into the story. Yeah.
I know that in our second book, Flash Zombies, we had a scene that took place in a storage facility, and that scene that we wrote scared me so much. We had 2 storage facilities at the time that I was afraid to go to our own storage facility.
We kept looking over our shoulder every time we went in there.
Yeah, you do that, and you write things, and you're amazed that you write them. And what I have found, I have, I guess I've got 12 books now in audio. And I'm always amazed to listen to the books and knowing that those are my words and I wrote them.
Yeah,
I know, right?
And somebody else is obviously narrating them, but yes, it's different. It can scare you sometimes. It can. And my friends say, I guess we can say this. They say, "Where do you come up with all this shit?" And I don't know where I come up with all this. So it just happens to be there. So
yeah.
Here's a question from Diane.
Oh,
can you read that?
Friends.
Are most of your characters real people that you've known, just with play on names?
Well, I wouldn't say most, Diane, but some are, and I think I know her, so I think she knows who those characters are. I mean, the bend overs and those. I might relate them to somebody, but you wouldn't know who they were, not from reading the book. No, so. But
You're a really good friend.
I guess to answer her question, a lot of the core characters that continue throughout the series and they are people that know me and read it would probably recognize. Yes, they should.
Yeah, they'd recognize themselves.
Yeah.
On the subject of audiobooks, you mentioned audiobooks. You have one coming out shortly or just came out?
It's in production as we speak. I expect it to be finalized tomorrow. That's it. Yeah, tomorrow or the next day. and it should show up on Amazon next week. And as a side to that, that book, along with two others, which is Murder My Darling and Lack of Candor, I'm going to put into a box set.
Oh,
And
cool.
and there'll be a box set. You can get them on Amazon, obviously, as an ebook, whatever. But there'll be a box set, an audio box set. Now that's not out yet, but it will be in the next probably into summer anyway.
Okay, so you picked those 3 in a box set. Are they like closely related stories?
Well, they're like 16, 17, and 18 in the series. So I mean, yes,
they're in a row.
they are.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
That would be a sequence, wouldn't it?
Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, but other than that, they're not tied together for no reason other than they are congruent in the way they were written. Yeah,
they stand alone. Yeah,
but they're all standalone. Every book is standalone. You can pick one up and read it, and you won't be confused by anything. Everything is explained to you about the character, the Carson character, and where he is, and why he's there, and who his people are, and all that. And then we go off to the other characters, the the lefty then rights and all the rest of that stuff. So
So what do you do when you're not writing books?
I fish, I hunt, I play golf. I don't know.
barbecue.
Yeah, we know you barbecue.
Well, I have to eat, so yeah, I do. I do that on.
It's an important part of your yard.
You watch football and other sports.
I watch sports. I like NASCAR. I go to NASCAR races. I wasn't at Daytona this year. I was last year, but I've been to, I don't know, most of the tracks over the years, and so I am a sports fan. I do that.
Maybe Carson should go to one of these tracks and investigate a murder there.
That'd be good.
Well, that's a thought. That is a thought. Yeah.
I've often
you have to be working on something, and I am working on something. You always have one in the pocket. So
rolling around in there, right?
yeah,
absolutely.
I've always wanted to have a murder at Disney World.
Okay, yeah,
Not a real one.
No, not a real one. I always have wanted to set one in Disney World. I don't know why. We would go to Disney World and I'd sit on the rides and think of how people could be killed
Now
on the
watch
ride.
somebody get murdered over there tonight. You're going to get blamed for it. 2021. Who can figure?
My whole Carson thing started from just a conversation. I mean, I had written my autobiography. Which was really just a story of tales that I put together over the years, fun stuff. And I had written it over the years of traveling. I spent hours and hours on airplanes, and I read books, and I wrote all my notes down, and I did that. And then I got to talking to some people, and they said, "Well, would it be cool if we had a murder story in our little hometown of Humboldt?" So I sat down, I created a character of Carson, Reno, and I wrote a book called Murder in Humboldt.
Oh, that's interesting.
And I did use, as Diane just asked, I did use a lot of the real characters, misnamed, but real, and put together that story. And it went from there. And that's kind of how it started.
Paul Hollis says hello.
Hello.
I don't know if you saw Dominic Santasario said, hey, hello, and Genevieve Andrews Kelly. He saw Diane said, you know that Diane said hello, right? Right at the beginning.
Yeah.
Hi, everybody. I think you should all email and try and get your autographed copy.
Yeah, right. Don't forget, first 4 people to email Gerald. He'll take them in sequence there and send you out one of his books, all signed up and ready to go. That's
something from the library.
Something from your library.
I'm not sure what it'll be. I may ask them some questions, and for us, and we'll send them something out.
Yeah, these are USA only, of course.
Yes.
It's tough to mail anywhere else, and you know that.
Only
Yes,
America.
we do know that.
America.
It's impossible to do that. I mean, it's not worth the hassle to even try. I mean, Hawaii, of course, but in fact, I even have a fan in Hawaii who orders books. But what I do when I introduce a book, I do offer it out as signed and autographed, and I send them out that way, and then after that, it's purchase it online. So we all do it the same way, I'm quite sure.
Oh yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, for sure. That really is for sure.
All right. Well, we're getting close to break time here. So
anyone else have another question for Gerald? Well, because we'll be bringing on Mike next. If you've got something, now's your time.
Now's your time to shine if you have a question.
I found that really interesting how you, I know. Yeah, put up what Robert says. Well, Robert knows about this. He says shipping costs are extraordinary. That's why I tend to go for Kindle.
Yeah. Well, obviously Amazon can do things that none of us can do. So we rely on them a lot. But it's hard to ship my library to anywhere overseas. So I do recommend you go. I can gift it. You can gift it from there, which is doable. But it's not signed and an autograph.
Right. That's the difference. I did have an author-to-author question for you. Do you use the same narrator for all of your Audible books?
No, I do not.
Neither do we.
I will be using the same narrator for the box set.
Oh, that makes sense.
That does make sense. Yeah, that's a good idea.
But the others, I have a separate narrators, and so reasons being they were available at the time I decided to do it. And I mean, I did the audio books. I started, I don't know, 6 or 7 years ago doing that, and they've been pretty fruitful. I was not sold on audiobooks because of the way that, download. It's not something you can touch and feel. But nowadays, that's the way people do things. So.
Oh yeah, we have one daughter and her husband. That's all they listen to is audiobooks.
Yeah, but I thought it would be, you would want the CD in your hand where you could play it and do it that way. But now it's not that way. So I
didn't want that.
No, they stream everything.
You have to store them. You have to keep them from getting scratched. All the blah blah blah. Change them in the recorder. Yeah. Anyway, I think we're going to go ahead and take our break now, our commercial break that we're obliged to do. So Gerald, sit tight.
Well, thanks for having me.
Don't go anywhere. And
thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for coming on. Later on, at the end of the show, any questions, we'll open it up for questions to you as well, again, in case somebody cooks something up in the meantime. And so sit back and relax, and we'll be right back.
Paratalk Radio is a member of radio.com. Download the app, search Paratalk Radio. One word. That's it. Pretty easy peasy. Radio.com.
WLFE DB Radio is on Spotify with all its great shows like Across the Pond, Inside the Drag Closet, Step into the Paranormal, Just Cindy, Where's My Sage, Unfiltered Talks with Bryce, Metal Mayhem ROC, Paratalk Radio, Real Talk with Dom, and more. So download the Spotify app today to stay connected to all your WLFE DB Radio shows.
You've been listening to WLFE-DB.com, where our shows are your shows.
Hey Hey guys and dolls, this is Casey DeVille, the better half of DeVille Inc., Baltimore, Maryland. If you're ever in Baltimore, stop in and see me and Tony. Invisible Bree, 5920 Eastern Avenue, Baltimore, Maryland, 21224. Give us a call if you're in the area, 410-400-9641, or look us up on the web at DeVilleInc.com. DeVille Inc., where we specialize in you.
You're listening to WLFE DB Radio. Now, back to our program.
Well, hello there. That was refreshing. For those of you who just joined us, we spent the first half hour here with Gerald Darnell, mystery author. And we are now ready to bring in mystery author Michael Daigle, the Frank Nagler Mystery Series creator. So come on in, Mike.
Hi, Mike.
Hello, everybody. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Very well, thank you. Very well. Thank you for inviting me. I'm glad to be here.
Glad to have you here.
Yeah, listening to Gerald's a lot of familiar stuff there. Very interesting approach. So glad to hear that. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I did too. I enjoyed hearing it too.
Michael, where are you located?
I'm in New Jersey, a place called Phillipsburg, New Jersey. It's along the Delaware River. It's sort of in the skinny waist part of New Jersey. You know how New Jersey has there's a little curve to it. We're at the far end of Route 78 on the Delaware River, part of the Lehigh Valley section of Pennsylvania and New Jersey.
That's that where they used to bury all the bodies, right?
Actually, I write about a different part, but we know all about that.
That's a real mystery.
We actually have quite a few people on here that are listening right now that are from New Jersey.
There you go.
Yeah.
But that's okay.
Yeah, hope you all got yourself dug out from our snowy February, because it was the first time in 5 years that we've had snow, and we got all of it at once. So
there you go.
It's winter, and winter in the Northeast.
There you go. Well, we're in Florida, so you can't relate to that. But anyway, Michael, tell us a little about Frank Nagler.
I grew up in the Northeast, all over the place, and Frank Nagler is a product of growing up in the Northeast. Back when I was in college, there was a little notice in the newspaper about somebody breaking into a college dorm and walking out with some cash and items that could be fenced. And so I kind of said, okay, that's interesting. Nobody caught him. And no one was ever going to caught him because nobody saw him. So I wrote, 4 or 5 paragraphs. And it's the kind of thing that in my journalism career for 35 years, you wrote 150 of those a year. Little cop item that comes across and, break in at this place, break in at that place. So I was looking at it and I said, well, what happens if he runs into somebody? So I wrote another 8 paragraphs. And suddenly I had 16 paragraphs about a break-in at the local college. And the next thing I had, I said, well, what happens if he gets caught? And so and from there, we created the Frank Nagler series. Frank, in the first book, was a retired cop messing around with an investigation. But when I knew I created him as a character, I knew I could write a series about him. The problem was that he was 75 in the first, started at 75 in the first book.
Which isn't old, by the way.
Well, yeah.
That's not old.
My problem with that is that, he's going to have a heart attack in the middle of the second book. So I made him younger. It didn't work because now he's in 4 books and we're working him through the 5th book. So they take place in a city called Ironton, New Jersey, which is based on actual places up in Morris County. Morris County, oddly, which is now just big suburbia, for 300 years was the center of an iron mining and manufacturing industry. It created wave after wave of wealth and basically formed the landscape in a lot of these towns. And the town of Dover was at the center of the whole thing. And it had, along the Rockaway River, there was probably 3/4 of a mile of factories from one end to the other, and it ran off into the next town over. There's so much iron ore in this region. One of the books that I did research for when I was a newspaper guy said that there are 600 million tons of iron ore under Morris County right now.
Wow.
It's just that you can't. What happened was it exceeded their ability to get it out of the ground at cost. And by the time the 20th century rolled around, they had discovered easily accessible, high quality iron ore in Minnesota, and it slowly killed off the New Jersey industry. And now it's all suburbia. But there's a little town called Mine Hill in the middle, which is exactly what it is. It's this big lump of iron ore. And on the back side of some of those towns, your cell phone doesn't work because there's so much iron ore, there's no signal.
Wow.
It's all one big lump of iron. And it's a fascinating history, and I use that throughout all the books. The town of Ironton is sort of on the downside of all of that, and all the buildings are there. So we use the buildings for atmosphere and places where murders take place, and we're always walking through them looking for people, and walking around them looking for people. And there's a place that I create in the first book, The Swamps of Jersey. It's called that because it opens in a swamp. The swamp is where if anyone from New Jersey may know this, along Route 80, there's the Rockaway Town Square Mall. It was in the 1970s, it was the largest shopping center west of New York City. Back in the iron days, it was a swamp. And in my history research, in one of the huge books on the iron business, there's a mention of a swamp in this place, and that's my swamp. So it actually exists. So,
wow.
And I took away the shopping center and left the swamp. It's more fun. So
there you go. So you have 4 books in this series, is that right?
I have 4 books in the series. First one is The Swamps of Jersey. Then there's a game called Dead, The Weight of Living, and the last one, published in 2019, was The Red Hand, which is actually a prequel to the whole thing. And now I'm working on the 5th one, and I've had 4 different titles of it, and I have no idea what it's going to be called. But it brings together all the elements that have shown up in these books, and Frank and his buddies are dealing with. And in this one opens with an explosion that blows up 1.5 blocks of downtown. So we're going to try to figure out who did that.
That sounds exciting.
It's fun.
Explosions are always fun.
Yeah, I haven't blown anything up like that yet. So this, that's what makes it fun.
I was just thinking that we've never blown anything up either. We've done a lot of nefarious things, but we've never blown anything up.
No.
I don't know anything about it. That would be a lot of research. Which I like.
I've done a lot of that, but it's the thing that I know is natural gas is pretty explosive.
Oh yeah.
And there was a part of what inspired us in 2018 in Massachusetts.
North Adams.
Situation in North Adams, somebody tried to force high pressure gas into a low pressure line, and 80 buildings blew up.
We were there.
Yeah. Okay.
We were there.
After, yeah.
That was the scariest thing I'd read about.
We were on our way to Maine. That was a trip that was unbelievable. We were on our way to Maine from Florida, right? and a hurricane came and chased us all the way through
Okay.
South Carolina and North Carolina.
All the traffic from I-95 moved over
It was
onto the other interstate.
The only people on the freeway with us were emergency vehicles, first responders, and electrical trucks going in our direction. And there were tons of people going in the other direction. It was terrifying. And then we had booked a hotel room in North Adams, and it was hours, literally hours after the explosion. There was no electricity in the hotel. There was no heat. There was no food there.
People sleeping in their cars in the parking lot.
Well, it was interesting because they first told people to shut off, try to shut off their gas.
Yeah.
But then they realized that, some guy who's doesn't know where the gas shut off is going to go down there with a wrench and blow himself up. So then once they figured the extent of what was going on, they told people just to leave their houses and don't turn the lights off, because turning a light switch off could blow up your house. It was filled
with the spark.
So it was quite an amazing thing that that company got fined and they had to spend millions to fix everything. I mean, they replaced every gas line. They were replacing all the appliances, rebuilding the houses, and all the rest of it. It was quite an event. So I take a piece of that and blow up part of downtown Ironton. So
so it's a gas explosion. That's a really good idea. I remember.
Well, the thing is, it's sort of a gas explosion.
Oh, okay.
We're getting into the parts where it may not be a gas explosion. It might not be who you think it is. So,
that's why it's called a mystery.
That's right. Yes, So, because one of the things that I've done a lot of research on is how to blow things up. So, I think I'm going to use some of that as much as I can. So. It also gives Frank, whose his life is pretty well documented in all of these stories. And the reason I had to write the prequel is that people wanted to know. I've been dropping hints of his back life through all the stories, and people wanted to know more about that. So when I finished the Red Hand or the Weight of Living, I had a choice. I could go forward into this story or backward and sort of explain the details. And I thought that I needed to go backward because I want to kind of conclude some of these things. And I really had to explain them. So I had to go back to move the story back 20 years to when Frank was a rookie cop chasing a serial killer in the city of Ironton. It caused some consternation because the end of the Weight of Living. Most mysteries, and Mickey Spillane said an interesting thing about cop mysteries is that they're generally forward-thinking and supportive and resolute. So you catch the bad guys, and the good guys are okay, but they're not perfect, and everything sort of settles out, and everybody has a drink, and you're fine. And in the first two books, that sort of happened. After all the running around cop stuff, there's a couple of pages where Frank gets to look in the mirror and goes, well, I'm not bleeding and I'm breathing, so I guess I'm okay. At the end of The Weight of Living, which is a much more complex plot, I kind of threw him off the cliff. It came out weirdly because the Weight of Living is about trying to find the name and family of this young girl who's found standing on an Ironton street in March wearing a tank top and shorts, and that's it. She doesn't say anything, and you have to figure out who she is. And the fun part is she's there for a specific reason. She was placed on the street. It's not an accident that she's there. And the reason for it is what the whole story is about. But as I started the book, I knew what the last line was going to be, but I thought that Frank was going to say it. And about 3/4 of the way through the book, I said, that's not possible. He can't be the one who delivers this last line. It has to be said to him by somebody else. And it was, and I kind of just, and then I just ended it. And my wife was reading the book, and she stuck her head in my office and said, "That's how you ended it?"
Oh.
And I said, "Yep." You know, so I needed to write the next one because I've got to have, I literally, you know, in a figurative sense, I threw Frank off the cliff. I've got to have him land. His umbrella has to open here, and he has to land at this point. So that's sort of why I'm doing the 5th book.
Could use a trampoline. He could bounce back
Or a
up.
parachute.
Yeah, I was thinking, you know, there's that Wile E. Coyote image.
Yeah, well, there's that too.
Well, we all grew up with Wile E. Coyote,
Right.
so
Right.
we think of that way.
Before we go any further, book giveaway for Michael. It's been scrolling across the bottom, but if you can't see it for some reason, the first 2 people to email Michael, Stephen Daigle at hotmail.com, will win a signed 4-book set of the Frank Nagler Mystery Series, USA only again. All right. I didn't mention that at the beginning of your.
Looking forward to it. You know, you were talking with Gerald about audiobooks. We have two audiobooks, and we're going to do the other 2 as we move forward. My publisher had also compiled the first 3 books in an anthology that's available through online services. I can't send that one out because I have 1 copy of it. We also produced a hardcover version of that, and I think I bought the only one. So I wanted it for my library, so I have a hard copy anthology, which is just kind of cool. But what the heck, you know?
There you go.
You know.
So, what did you do before you really got going on the writing?
I started writing a lot. I got through college because I could string words together. I could go through 1,000 pages of English poetry and write 1,000-word thesis on it. And in fact, I did for my senior thesis. I wrote a 1,000-word thesis sitting on the carpet in my father's living room. 50 miles from the college, wrote the thing up in the morning, made sure it was sort of clean, and drove it to the college and got it there by 4 o'clock. But wow. I had that ability to string words together. So I just started writing stuff down. And when I was in my early 20s, I wrote drafts of 2 novels, one of which kicked off the Frank Nagler series, and the other one is still kicking around. And I started reading it sometime last year, and it's not as bad as I thought it was. So I think there's a way of resurrecting it. After doing a bunch of other stuff, restaurants and warehouse work management and things like that, I got into the newspaper business in my early 30s, and I was home. I walked into a little newsroom in Fairhaven, Massachusetts, a place called the Fairhaven Advocate. We had 1 computer, and that was for the typesetter. And I instantly knew I could do that. So that's what I did for the next 35 years. I ran a weekly newspaper up in Maine in Skowhegan. When the guy hired me, he told me, "You've got 6 months to straighten it out. I've lost money for 20 years. And if you can't fix it in 6 months, I'm going to close it down." And I thought, well, I've got 6 months. I'm sure I can do something here. 18 months later, we had basically fixed the paper. And it stayed in business. I left shortly after that and went to a daily. But we did enough, so it stayed in business for another 10 years. So
awesome.
And then I got into the daily newspaper business in Waterville, Maine, and then moved to New Jersey, where I was there for like 22 years. So a lot of that experience shows up in the Nagler books. I have a reporter who is not me. In fact, Jimmy Dawson was created in the early version of the first book, long before I got into the newspaper business. And over time, he has taken on the characteristics of the best people I worked with, which is one of the ways I can pay tribute to them and what they taught me, and just the the honor of watching them work. So,
As an old newspaper guy, I don't mean that you're old, but I mean with all of that experiences in the newspaper, what do you think is the outlook for newspapers today?
very scary.
Yeah.
Part of the reason we all got out of the newspaper business is that the companies that owned us sort of got rid of us because they thought they didn't need anybody. So 10, 12 years ago, there was a great purging of the size newspapers that I work for. They messed it up from the beginning with the internet. They did not understand what was going to happen. And the company I was working for, instead of investing in and examining how to make electronic products, bought $3 billion worth of British weeklies and just drained the company of resources. The big papers, New York Times, Wall Street Journal, Washington Post, LA Times, not so much Chicago, because Chicago got bought up by a real estate guy who thought he was selling condos and not newspapers and screwed the whole company up. But today, the investment that they're getting, they never quite figured out how to deal with the real estate balance and the news balance. And so a lot of the companies are being taken over by hedge fund managers, which is just the scariest thing around, because they look at everything as bottom line and they don't care what the product is. And the demise of the mid-sized local newspaper across this country is one of the great, if the story's told a lot, but nobody quite understands the impact, because it's not just the jobs lost. It's not just the fact that, there's nobody working. It's the fact that all those places that relied on the newspaper for information or to get out information have no place to put it. So what you've done is you scattered all that to the 12 billion places on the internet where people can and cannot find information. Some people figure it out, but early on, it was hard. And what happens is that no one covers your school board, no one covers your government, no one covers the courts, and you don't know. We've lost contact with how local towns and local governments work, and as a result, everything that shows up is suspect, because nobody knows the process. Sure. And the one thing that I got out of all of that time, sitting in council meetings and courtrooms and standing on the roadside watching accidents and stuff like that, is how that stuff works. And I use that in the stories. I have people who understand it, excuse me, and either use it to their advantage, or are the people inside the system chasing the guys trying to use it for their advantage. So, and we had, you've covered everything. One of the fun places I worked was in Skowhegan, Maine. Maine has regional high schools, regional school districts, and in order to offset big towns dominating all the votes on all the other small towns that were attached to their district, they have large school districts with weighted votes. So a school budget would pass 9,612 to 2013, because that's just how they weighted the votes. But we found, covering the Skowhegan School Board had 23 members. They met in this little space in their library where they pushed a bunch of tables together. And the thing that you noticed immediately is that all the Skowhegan reps, that was the big town, sat in different places. And they would send messages. They'd pick up a pencil, they'd scratch their nose, they'd rub their neck. All of that was code for yes vote, no vote, raise this objection. So you just watched all of that play out. It was really kind of fun.
So
Michael,
go ahead,
Michael,
Gerald.
can I ask a question?
Sure.
Is there a phrase or a statement that you would say describes your work? I mean, if you had to write it out, what would that be?
Frank Nagler mysteries are, and I didn't think of this when I wrote about it, but people tell me that he's as noirish a detective as the old classics, and they're gritty, they're dark, they're urban, and they're fast paced. There's all this stuff going on, but if you can't get the reader to turn the page, they've got plot twists. They have characters that come out of nowhere, and trying to make all of the stuff that goes on in these books fun to read. If I can't get the reader to turn the page anticipating what is going to happen, then they're works of sociology and not mysteries. And what you want them to be is something that has that sort of background to it, but is developed in a way that the reader wants to turn the page. And I've had people tell me that they started reading one of the book or the other and read the whole thing in one day. So
yeah,
That's a compliment.
So if anybody has any questions for either Gerald or Michael, now's the time, because we only have a few minutes left here.
And just say hello, Farmer Damon Baird. Glad you came to the show. And also you, Robert White. So that was really nice. Of course, we already said hello to Paul and Dominic and Diane and Genevieve, but they just hopped on and I didn't get to really welcome them.
So, yeah, I had one woman who bought. I was at a book fair, and I had gone to the book fair the year before, and being hugely optimistic, brought way too many books. So I went back this year and brought fewer, and I knew I was in trouble because somebody walked up and bought 2 complete sets within 10 minutes, and I'm thinking I don't have that many books. And then I got an email from a woman who bought all 3 books, and she sat down and read them back to back to back, which is about 900 pages of Frank Nagler, and that's a lot of Frank Nagler. You know, but I appreciate her. I mean, she enjoyed it and said she just wanted to move from one story to the next, and it's like, well, thank you very much.
Yeah,
my day, you know. So yeah, that's the goal. Is you want to write all the stuff that resonates to people in their lives, but also is something that raises questions and gets people to turn the page. And I do this in regular fiction too. I like writing, starting with messy stories, and then sorting them out. That for me is the fun of writing them in the first place. So,
Okay, so Gerald, we're going to turn it around and ask you the same question you asked Michael. Can you answer the same question?
I can, absolutely.
I can't remember what the question was, how you worded it.
I said, is there a phrase or statement that describes your work? And I've used it in a number of my stories, and it's simple. It says it all started with a woman, and
yeah. Yeah, it was fun. I went to a book reading, a book club reading after the first book came out, and then I had just the second book, so I brought that along. And this is the kind of thing that warms the heart of every reader, every writer. I walked into this place, and I said, "Here, thank you for reading the first one. Here's copies of the second one if you'd like to read it." One of them picked up the book and looked at it and said, "Is Lauren Fox in this book?" And I said, "Yes." Because Lauren Fox is sort of the heroine or the hero in The Swamps of Jersey, but she actually never appears in the book. She left town before everything started for a couple of reasons, but provides key information to solving it. And she's a great character. So they wanted to know if she showed up. And I said, yeah, she's good. You can stay. When I walked in, there's a scene in The Swamps of Jersey where Nagler and Jimmy Dawson are at the swamp watching some cops in a boat sift through the muck looking for evidence. And they find a severed hand of a woman with a gold ring. And so when I walked into this place, stretched out across the mantle were little plastic gloves filled with popcorn and a gold ring. And it's like, okay, you got it. Thank you very much. You know? So,
Okay, well,
that made my night.
there you go. This has been awesome. You guys are really good guests. We appreciate you coming on, and it was great learning about your books and your careers. And let's see if there's any.
Elizabeth, here we go.
There we go. It's a good comment.
That is a good comment.
All right. So you guys are welcome back anytime.
Yeah, thank you.
And
Gerald, it was great to meet you, and great to meet you, Rob and Joan, and thank you for this opportunity. This has
You're
been
welcome. Thank you for coming.
and you guys are going to get
Nice to meet you, Michael, and nice to see you, as I said earlier.
Absolutely, yeah.
No, it's fun to put faces to everybody that we've known for years online, right?
Yeah, yeah,
I'm enjoying it.
yeah.
Yeah,
So
It is different when you see somebody other than just a typed message, right? There you go.
yeah.
That's right. That's right. We
okay.
need to sign off.
Yes, we do. And just a second here. Wanted to put in a word here for the radio station. You need to enjoy some of the other shows that WLFE-DB.com radio has. And Thursday, we've got Jess Cindy is on, and Everything But Nothing with T-Roy. Friday, a couple of shows there, Skeptical Health Bar and Card Pulls and Coffee. Sunday, Across the Pond with two Brits and two Americans. Monday is Paratalk Radio with Ted and Cindy, and Real Talk with Dom. And Tuesday is The Creepy Parlor with Genevieve, and Where's My Sage with Mike and Christy. So there's a lot to look forward to. Next show we're going to have will be on the 17th. And we're going to welcome author Orlando Sanchez and Mark Rosendorf. So you want to make sure you tune in for that. There's no show next week, the 10th. We'll be off camping.
Oh, yeah. We won't be here next week.
So anyway, I want to thank you again, guys, and everyone for listening. And
Wait a minute. Let me get this.
oh, we have another comment.
We've
a couple
got another
comments
couple
there.
of
Okay,
comments.
let's get those cleaned out there.
All right. Next best thing to a movie.
That's somebody. That is somebody.
Discussion.
Yes.
Thanks, everyone. Well,
But-
thanks for coming, Paul. We enjoyed having you in the audience.
No, that's good. So without further ado, we're going to sign off for now, and
We won't be here next week, but the following week.
following week, and on to the next.
Yeah, on to the next.
Thank you for joining us here on Meet the Author. Make sure you stay up to date with our show by clicking like, follow, and share. And you can find us on Spotify, iTunes, and more. See you next time on WLFE-DB.com.
You've been listening to WLFE-DB.com, where our shows are your shows.